Hey kids, I was wondering, have you ever wondered if God still does miracles like he used to in Bible times? Does he heal people like he used to? Well, I used to wonder that too. I went to India to do some evangelism, and I was sitting in the airport waiting to come back. We had had an amazing experience where at every evangelism site, about 525 people had been baptized, 500, somewhere around there at each site. And it had been absolutely an amazing experience. But I'm sitting in the airport and I am really sleepy. I am tired and I'm afraid my flight doesn't leave for a long time. I'm afraid I'm going to go to sleep and miss my flight. So I looked around to see if anybody there might look like they might speak English and might want to talk. Well, I saw a gentleman sitting there with red hair and blue eyes, and I said, maybe he speaks English. And so I went over there, and he told me an amazing story that I want to tell you today. He was a pastor from Australia, and he told me that the first time he went to India, he was preaching every night, and hundreds of people were coming. And as they came every night to learn about Jesus, they had several baptisms. They would go down to the river and they would baptize people, and it was going fantastic. But the last night, he was picking up his computer and his projector, was getting ready to put it away. All the people had gone away when somebody stepped up on the stage and he heard the words, "Pastor, Pastor." The only words this man knew in English. He turned around and he went, "Oh!" Now, usually you're not supposed to gasp when you look at somebody, right? But this man looked terrible. He was a leper. He had leprosy. Have you heard of leprosy from the Bible? Yeah. Well, he had leprosy, and his nose had rotted off and fallen off his face, and he had a big hole where his cheek used to be. You could see his teeth moving up and down when he talked. He also didn't have any fingers or toes. They had rotted and fallen off of his body, and he smelled terrible. But with the help of the translator, he said to the pastor, he says, "Pastor, would you please pray for me? I've been coming every night, and I sat behind that tree over there listening to the most wonderful news I have ever heard in my life about a Jesus that loves me. Yes, me, even me, a leper. And I would like to ask you to pray to God for 3 things. Number 1, that God would heal my fingers. Because you see, I want a Bible. And if God would heal my fingers, I would be able to turn the pages of the Bible. And that God would give me a Bible. And that God would teach me how to read." And the pastor said, "Wow, I don't think I've ever prayed for a leper before. I'm not sure what to expect, but okay." So he prayed for this man, and you know what? When he opened his eyes, the man looked exactly the same. And the pastor felt really guilty. And the devil whispered in the pastor's ear, you know how sometimes we're tempted? And the devil said to him, "You're the only Christian he knows. The Bible says that if you had as much faith as a little tiny mustard seed, you could tell that mountain over there to move, and it would move. You're the first Christian he's ever met, and you don't have enough faith to heal him." Well, first of all, children, we never heal anybody, do we? That would be Jesus' job, right? But the pastor felt so bad. Maybe he didn't have enough faith. Oh dear. But he said to the man, "Can I take your picture? I'll print it out and look at it every day to pray for you." The man said yes. So he took the man's picture. He went home to Australia. He printed it out, put it on the refrigerator door with some magnets. And every day when he got his milk out for his breakfast, he would see that face looking back at him and he would pray for him. Finally, 2 years went by, and the pastor had a chance to go back to India again to do evangelism again. And he wanted to see the people that he had baptized the time before, but he was going to be 100 kilometers away from where he had been the time before, and he was afraid if he told him he was coming, maybe he wouldn't have enough time to go see them. So he thought, I'm not going to tell him. I'm just going to show up as a surprise when I get some free time. And so he decided to do exactly that. So he got on the airplane, he went to India, he preached a meeting, but you know what? There was even more people at that meeting than there had ever been at the other meeting. And so he didn't have enough time to go see the first village because it was about 100 kilometers. That's quite a ways. So the last night, he's putting away his stuff again inside this huge tent that they had pitched. And he was putting stuff away when he heard somebody running from outside. He thought, that's strange. I wonder who's here. And before he could turn around, somebody gave him a big, sweaty hug. That really surprised him because in India, in that section of India, nobody hugs anybody. So he was very surprised that he got a hug. He turned around and he said, hi. And the man said, Pastor, Pastor. He called over his translator. Do you remember me? He looked at the man and he said, no, I've never seen you before. Oh, Pastor, look at my eyes. Do you remember me? Pastor said, you know, it's very strange. I do recognize your eyes, but not your face. I don't know why. I'm so sorry. The man says, but Pastor, I'm the leper. And the pastor knew he was telling him the truth because those were the same eyes that looked at him from the refrigerator door every day. He said, oh my, what happened? He said, well, I went back to my village. And when I went back to my village, I told them about Jesus. And I told them about Jesus every single night for a whole week, for about an hour every night. And then I ran out of stuff to say. I couldn't remember anything else. And so somebody said, can't you remember anything else? He said, no. Well, where could you find out more about this Jesus? He said, well, if somebody would buy me a Bible, that's God's book. I could read you lots more stories and tell you a lot more things about Jesus, but I don't have any money. And somebody said, really? How are you going to read? And they said, you don't go to school. None of us have gone to school in this little village. We don't know how to read. He said, but the God of heaven is all powerful and he will teach me how to read. So if you will buy me a Bible, I will read it to you. Really, said a lady. Well, if this God is so powerful, how's come you still have leprosy? He didn't know what to say. He thought about it and he said, oh, because you see, it's not essential that I be healed. But it's essential that you know about Jesus. So if you get me a Bible, I will learn how to read because the God of heaven is going to teach me. Little old man said, okay. He says, I'm going to go and I'm going to go to the big city tomorrow. I'm going to take all my life savings and I'm going to buy a Bible. I sure hope you know how to read. So he did. He went to the big city. It took him all day to find a Bible. They wanted to sell him a Quran and other important religious books, but that are not Bibles, and they don't tell us that much about Jesus. And so finally he found a Bible. He brought it back. The little leper was waiting for him. He gave him the Bible and he said, I sure hope you can read. Well, the little leper had seen street signs. You know how you see street signs that says the name of the street? But he didn't know what those letters meant. He opened the Bible. He says, Pastor, you know where it opened to? It's now my favorite text. I don't know, but it's the first time I ever read it. It said, for God so loved the world, that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believes in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Whosoever, Pastor, includes people like me. And he says, I don't know how I could read. I just could. And he said the little old man got so excited, he ran through the village yelling, he can read, he can read. And he woke up people and they came out. And he says, I read to them for about an hour. We started in Genesis and I read them about creation. And Pastor, we've read every night for about an hour. We've read through the Bible more than once. And the other day we heard that the red-haired pastor was back. So I was wondering, Pastor, if you would baptize us. Us, said the pastor. He said, yes, Pastor. As I kept reading the Bible, my nose grew back, my cheek filled in, my fingers came back. I don't know how, but I went to see a doctor and he said that I'm no longer a leper. And he couldn't believe it because none of his gods have ever done anything like that for him before. And I told him it's because the God of heaven is, of course, the greatest God. And that's why he is the only true God. And that's why I was healed. And so, Pastor, we've been reading every night and there's 25 people outside the tent, Pastor, that want to get baptized. We've been walking day and night to get here. Would you baptize us? And that night, boys and girls, that previous leper and 25 people from his village got baptized because the God of heaven hasn't changed a bit since Bible times. God can do the same through you. Don't ever say you're too young.